Like Native Americans before them, the English colonists settled in Henrico County because of its strategic location on the James River. The waterway provided access to distant lands and proved vital to trade. But as transportation modes evolved to rail and then roads, the river became a barrier to the free exchange of goods and services. To overcome this challenge, bridges were erected to span the James. Today, 4 of them serve as gateways to Henrico, marvels of engineering science and vital parts of a 21st century transportation network that moves the county and the region. The Huguenot, Willie, Varina-Enon and Pocahontas Parkway bridges keep our communities connected, spur commerce and growth, and serve as icons or symbols of the county.
Each of the 4 bridges are unique in the way in which they were developed and constructed. They've all been built by VDOT, they're owned by VDOT, but they provide transportation into Henrico County from different jurisdictions. Really do serve as sort of beltways around the metropolitan area. These bridges are critical to providing services through the community as well as around the community.
With the abundance of streams and wetlands in the county, and of course including the Chickahominy and James River, commerce, goods and services, and jobs would be much more difficult to get to. The county of Henrico was founded at the falls of the James because that's where transportation could get goods and services in the day. And now we have bridges to help us get beyond the falls of the James with goods and services and jobs.
I think there's a certain grandeur about bridges, large structures like that, and the things that they cross, which are usually fairly large natural obstacles. I always enjoyed the fact that bridges were so exacting. I mean, everything has to fit together correctly on a bridge. I mean, if you're out, more than say an 1/8 of an inch, you can throw the whole geometry of a structure off. We do design, maintenance, construction, and inspection for the 2,500 plus bridges in the Richmond District area, which covers about 14 counties. Henrico County has 4 of the bridges in that inventory, and they are 4 of the largest structures that we actually have in our inventory.
The history of the Huguenot Bridge started in 1911 with the construction of a bridge by Charles Gregory. And his intent was to build a bridge to cross the James that would facilitate development on the south side of the river. That bridge was in use for a long time, up until about the early 40s, and then it was decided that that bridge needed to be replaced. It was no longer adequate. However, because of World War II and a shortage of critical construction materials, the construction of the new bridge, the second bridge at that crossing, was postponed until 1946. The original bridge was called the Weston Bridge, the original bridge built in 1911, and it was decided at the dedication of the new bridge in 1949 that instead of calling it the Weston Bridge again, they were going to call it the Huguenot Bridge. And that was to commemorate and honor the French Protestants that settled in Chesterfield and Goochland and Powhatan counties in the 18th century.
The Huguenot Memorial Bridge, it was a deficient bridge when we recently replaced it in 2013. The construction was finished on the new bridge. And the reason we replaced it was because the bridge had become deficient and we had to maintain it for a couple of decades. A lot of deck patching and steel repair work went into it over that time period. I spent a fair amount of my career doing the maintenance on that bridge. And it was getting in fairly rough shape.
That is what led to the current bridge that we have right now that crosses the James, which is also called the Huguenot Bridge. And in a lot of ways, stylistically, tries to mimic that 1949 design with the metal and the coloring of the railings.
We noticed on the old bridge, of course, that the citizens in the area use the sidewalk quite a bit for access between the north and south end of the Huguenot Bridge, for biking, for hiking, just walking rather, and there's a lot of shopping at the north end of the bridge, and a lot of folks down at the south end wanted to have access to that.
The Huguenot Bridge does provide both commuting opportunities, but it also provides some economic development opportunities. We have, on the Henrico South side, we have the Eye Institute, we have a retail shopping center on the Henrico side, and those have both really thrived with the larger volumes of traffic across the Huguenot Bridge.
The new Huguenot Bridge design was a multi-span steel girder design. Those are 75 to 100-year designs in general. Nobody can say exactly how long a bridge will last. Always depends on the conditions that it has to endure over its life, but that's generally what it was designed for.
There was a day set aside to give everyone an opportunity to say goodbye to the 1949 bridge before it was completely closed off for traffic, and they encouraged everyone to come out and ride their bikes and have a picnic and enjoy the views from the river and everything. And I didn't go. I wasn't really all that upset to see the old bridge go because I was excited about being able to drive over a nice, wide, smooth bridge. And I also knew too that the new design was going to be really, I thought, very sympathetic to what was already there and still kind of have the same feel to it.
But it's a very beautiful structure, and you can stand on the middle of it and watch kayakers and tubers below you and just the wildlife on the James River, and it's just a beautiful view.
The Willey Bridge is named after Edward E. Willey, who was a state senator to the Virginia General Assembly from 1952 to 1983.
I had the privilege of working with Senator Willey from 1979, when I came to work for the Finance Committee staff, until Senator Willey died in 1986, in August of 1986. But Senator Willey was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and vice chairman. Over time, he had a tremendous influence on the state budget in a number of areas. So I thought it was wonderful that the bridge was named after him.
The Willey Bridge really served as a needed connection to Western Henrico, because Western Henrico at that point was growing quite rapidly. In the 1970s and 1980s, Henrico County was growing quite a bit, and there needed to be another connection besides the Huguenot Bridge to provide additional flow from that end of Richmond and Chesterfield into Henrico County.
The Willey Bridge itself is a huge structure. It's over 4,200 feet long. It's a massive structure that goes over actually a relatively shallow portion of the James, since the bridge is above the falls, and has this very unique S shape to it. And then you can't miss the dam over to the west as you cross the bridge, and that's the Bossier Dam.
The Willey Bridge was a brand new bridge on a new location. Primary purpose of it was to connect, of course, the Chippenham Parkway on the south side of the river to Parham Road on the north side of the river. It's a multi-girder steel span, multiple steel spans actually. It's actually two bridges with a very small opening in between the two. Looks like one bridge because of that for the most part. Fairly standard type of design, the steel girder design with the concrete deck. But like I say, the alignment of it, because they were connecting two existing roads, it was a little tricky to make sure that you connected the right way without causing any kind of geometric issues with traffic on the approaches.
I always enjoy the view of the river from the bridge, and I always think about Senator Willey.
The Varina-Enon Bridge is named for the two communities that it connects, Varina and Enon. The community of Verona, the name Verona, a lot of people used to think that came from the wife of Jefferson Davis. Her name is Varina Howe, but actually it has a much older history than that. As you cross the bridge on the east side, you see this wide expanse of farmland. It's quite picturesque. That's actually Verona Farms, and that is the plantation where John Rolfe of Pocahontas, where he cultivated the tobacco that really made Virginia the lucrative colony that it was. And it was a particular type. It was not as strong as the tobacco that the Native Americans grew here in Virginia. It was a little bit more mild to kind of cater to the tastes of the Europeans. And it ended up being very similar to a type of tobacco that was grown in Spain at the time, which was called Verona. And that's where the name came from.
Varina-Enon is one of the earliest cable-stayed bridges in the United States. It was a fairly new technology. The cable stay is a type of suspension bridge. This particular bridge has a roughly 600-foot main span, and in order to accomplish that, they had to build approximately 300-foot pylons to run the cables over, and these are not the typical hanging type suspension cables that you see on things like the Golden Gate Bridge. They're very taut, straight alignments on the cables, and they're connected to what we call delta frames in the segments, the concrete segments that actually support the roadway. The Varina-Enon Bridge is one of the longest main spans in Virginia, which is the reason for the suspension type structure. It was built at the vertical clearance that it was built at because of the shipping traffic. Shipping runs up to the Port of Richmond, required that amount of clearance.
The design of it and having the cables come down, and you have these wide spans in between the cables, so you can still take in the vista and the view as you go across the bridge. In a way, it creates an openness that perhaps just a concrete structure or even a larger truss structure just wouldn't have. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge, the construction started on that in 1998, and it was complete in September of 2002. Massive structure, it's over 4,000 feet long. This is actually over 4,700 feet long. One of the spans is actually over 700 feet in length. On September 21st, 2002, the bridge was commemorated officially, and at that time it was decided that it would be called the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge to honor the over 1,300 Virginians that lost their life in that conflict, and also those that are still missing in action.
The bridge for 895 is a very critical connection. That does serve a connection that ties into 295, and it also ties two important key features, one being Richmond International Airport to the Richmond Port. With those connections, we saw a considerable amount of economic development take place in eastern Henrico. We saw warehousing and distribution facilities being built. We saw manufacturing beginning to come to eastern Henrico. So that bridge for 895 was a very critical connection.
As an engineer who designed part of the bridge, and then to see it, that people are using it safely, that's gives me the satisfaction that every design engineer would look for. The bridge itself has 3 ramps that goes from 95 north and south and goes to 895 all the way to 295. There are different methods of construction has been used with this project. The first one would be precast segmental. And the idea of precast segmental is just to have a segment of the bridge cast in a casting yard. Segment length usually about 10 feet. And then once you start having different of these segments, you transform the segments to the project site, and there you can post tensioning together. Start with one pier and you go like a telescopic from each side of the pier, and then you meet at the middle after that. And if you don't want to obstruct say the traffic underneath, you can build an overhead gantry that moves with the bridge till you finish the construction itself.
I would say that the Pocahontas Parkway was probably the more massive of the structures. Varina-Enon, being that it was a new technology, might have been a little more complicated to build, even though not quite as large or massive a structure.
In eastern Henrico, those 2 bridges that were constructed actually led to the rezoning of several urban mixed-use developments. Wilton on the James, Tree Hill Farm were zoned, probably as a result of the connectivity that was provided by those bridges.
From an engineering point of view, a bridge would take you usually over obstacles, and it takes you from point A to point B safely. And this is the passion about building a bridge, because if you have a gorge or a valley or a river or an ocean that you would like to cross from one point to the other, you always come to a bridge engineer to help you doing that. And this is how we feel that we are contributing to the civilization, because our design lifespan for these structures is about between 100 to 150 years. So it will last even after we die. So we leave a legacy for the people look at some magnificent marvel project and wonder how did they do it.